there, it's Kimberly here with Knit for Brains, and today I want to start this 3-part series on how to make garments really easy, even without a pattern. So stay tuned. Now, if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, I think you'll probably get to see, because I've just started realizing myself, that I'm kind of a sucker for garments. Like, everybody has their own shtick, things they like to do. Some people like to do amigurumi, some people like to do blankets. I seem to be kind of stuck on making garments for myself and for other people. So a lot of people, I think, are overwhelmed. They think, oh no, garments are too hard because you're going to have some shaping and this and that. And, you know, you have to worry about the other person's. And so I've been able to make some garments that I didn't have the person in front of me. And basically it's just a series of shapes, if you will. If you take a garment like this one here that I made for my son, which we're going to be talking about, this one here, this is literally, I think it turned out really cool. I'm going to actually, in the last part of the series, I'm going to show you how this works. I have to try it on the Brit. But so basically, I'm going to show you how to make something along the lines of this. This is just 4 shapes, 4 rectangles. That's all it is. If you think of a pattern or of a garment, not in the whole big, oh my gosh, decreases and shaping and this and that, but just think of it as far as shapes. I think it's going to be easier to wrap your head around it. So for instance, a sleeve is just a rectangle that's folded over. The front panel, or the back panel rather, is one big long rectangle. And the front panel is 2 smaller, skinnier rectangles that, when sewed together, equal the measurements of the back. And that was it. And then we just did a collar, which is just single crochet back and forth. So really, when you look at the collar, it's kind of like, I did a little bit of shaping here, but it really is just a single crochet back and forth, like you could make it one big rectangle. So the idea is, if we can demystify the idea of making garments and just make it into, like, think of it as shapes. Anybody can crochet a rectangle. If you can do a blanket, you can do a garment, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So I wanted to talk about some of the materials and how to kind of get started. I like to use natural fibers as much as possible, not because I'm a yarn snob, but I like the way the garments hang. I find that with acrylic, if it's 100% acrylic, it just doesn't feel as good. It doesn't have the absorbency. And so, you know, maybe if you're making a sweater, maybe, but I just find that you have to have some natural fibers in the garment for it to hang properly, for it just to wear properly. And so with a natural fiber, it's going to have a little bit of a natural drape. With acrylic, it just doesn't seem to have that kind of a drape if it's 100% acrylic. So I brought out some of my favorite natural fibers that I wanted to give you, and these are not expensive. The first one is, let's look at this one. This is the Happy Place yarn, sponsored by Tony Lipsy from Hobie. And this is just one of the balls that I grabbed. And this color here, it doesn't really matter what it's called, but it's 50% cotton and 50% wool. So I know it's a natural fiber. It's going to have that nice drape to it, but because it's cotton, cotton is actually a lot more affordable. And if you live in a warmer climate, you're definitely going to want to have some cotton or some linen or something along those lines. So this is a 50-50. And you'll just notice that the product, that the end result just hangs really nicely. For instance, I made this pattern here. Now, this did have some decreases, but I made this with the same yarn, just a different color, but you can see how it just kind of hangs. It's got some really good drape to it. Okay, this was just a little bralette that I had made. So that's what this looks like in a finished product. It doesn't have a lot of pilling, which sometimes acrylics can do. Depending on the cotton that you get, sometimes it can have some pilling, but it also washes up really, really well. And it typically isn't going to have a lot of shrinkage going on. So this is 100% cotton. Actually, no, this is the 50% wool, 50% cotton. So it's really good. It's very breathable also, which acrylic isn't always. This one here is 100% comfy worsted weight cotton, and it's by Knit Picks or We Crochet. It's 75. Okay, so here's a good point. This is 75% Pima cotton and 25% acrylic. So this is a mixture, but it's only 25% acrylic, which probably brings the cost down. But if you notice, it has that nice Pima cotton. So if you look at it, it's got a nice sheen to it that you get from the cotton. Let me see if I can pull it back a little bit. See, there you go. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking for. Because it's 75% Pima cotton, this is actually going to be okay. You can see how it's going to have a nice drape and a real nice softness to it. Okay. This here is also from Knit Picks. This is 70% linen and 30% Pima cotton. So here again, and with that linen, you're going to have a nice drape to it as well. And this is a fingerling weight. This is called the Lindy chain. And if you look at it, it has a little bit of a chain texture to the actual yarn when you get up nice and close to it. All right. And these come in, these are really affordable. I mean, even Sugars and Creams have some good cotton. So you don't have to go really expensive. You don't have to think, oh, natural fiber is so much more expensive. It doesn't have to be. I think these came in at like $2 or $3 a skein. The one that that has been my favorite recently, and unfortunately it's been discontinued, this is by Universal Yarn. This is called Radiance Cotton, and it's under their Fiber Natural line, which again is no longer available, but it is just 100% Egyptian cotton. So a Pima cotton or an Egyptian cotton is going to give you that ending result that you really want. And you can see it's got a nice sheen to it, and it's just going to have that really good drape. I'm currently using this on a dress, which I'm going to kind of show you as we go along. This is that look-alike Taylor Swift dress that everybody went bananas for on the internet, where she came out walking into a car, and she was wearing this guy. So this is basically the backside of it. Okay, and it's just a series of granny stripes. That's it. Very, very simple. It took me, I don't know, a day. If I were to put it all together, probably 5 or 6 hours to do this back panel. This is back or front. I'm going to do another panel that looks exactly the same. That's going to be the front, and then I'm going to do 2 other rectangles, which are going to be the sleeves. So we're going to see this thing come together. But again, this is just a rectangle. Nothing special about this. There's not going to be any decreases, not going to be any increases, nothing difficult. The first thing you want to do is figure out who your recipient is going to be, whether it's going to be yourself or somebody else. There is always good standard sizes, and you can find them all over the internet. You can find pictures just like this one here, where it shows you here's what a standard extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, and so forth looks like. And here's the measurements. And these are the measurements you want to get. So the first thing you want to get is the bust. You can follow along with these charts, and that'll pretty much take you where you need to get to. If the person you're buying for or making for is maybe a little bit on the smaller side, maybe you want to double check it with the actual measurements. So here's what you want to do. If you're looking at the bust, so you want to do a finished bust circumference. And to do that, and you can either use just a regular old, tape measure. You want to either do it in inches or centimeters. It really doesn't matter. To do a bust measurement, you want to go from the widest part around the back to the widest part around the front. So basically right across the nipple line. That right there is going to give you don't want to go up here. You want to go across the widest part so that you know when the garment is put on, it's going to be able to measure. Then you're going to want to do a waist circumference. So you want to get your measurement around the bust. Then you want to go around the waist. Again, I'm wearing a shirt. You would probably go around a naked waist. You want to get this measurement here. Then you're going to probably want to go around the hips. So you're going to take this measurement here and you're going to go all the way around the hips. So you're going to come up here and you're going to go like right around the widest part. So for me, that's going to be right down about here. Okay, so not up here, not down here. You want to get on the widest part. Okay. Then you're going to want to have the total length of the project, which is probably going to go from about the shoulder, not here, but you want to go from the top of the shoulder down to whatever length you're going to want it to be. So if you want it to be a long cardigan or a top or whatever, but you want to go from the top of the shoulder down to about here. Okay. Then you want to do the depth. So possibly if you're going to have like a V-neck, or if you're just going to have we're just going to do a straight across boat neck. So basically it would be from here. So it might be a little bit lower, or it could just be the same distance. So this one, maybe you don't have to find as much. The shoulder one's going to be important. And then you're going to want to have the length of the sleeve. So that's going to go from the top of the shoulder, not here, but from here, and go all the way down to wherever you want it to end. If you're going to want to end on the fingertips or on the wrist or a 3/4 sleeve or a short sleeve, whatever you want. Okay. And that's basically going to be the measurements. If you're going to be doing sleeves, you want to get the total circumference. So you're going to want to go around the arm. And again, this is just, hopefully, the piece that you've got is, if you Google it, you can find the standard measurements. So let's say you want to go around the arm, but then you're going to want to give it, you know, a little bit of extra slack to it. So maybe like an inch or two. That's going to depend if you want the sleeve to be kind of blousy or whatever. All right. And that's pretty much it. Again, depending if you're going to tack onto the wrist. But basically, you're just looking at like the length here, the length around here. That's going to tell you the width of the triangle. From here to here is going to give you the height, the length of the triangle. And then this here is going to give you around the width of it as well. So really, if you want to look at the 4 primary measurements, it's going to be around the bust area or around the chest, the length from the shoulder all the way down, coming around the arms, giving a little bit of a looseness here, and then just making sure that and then the length is however long you're going to want it to be. All right. Once you have those measurements, then what we need to do is to just figure out what your gauge is. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, the 2 things that I despise, that I hate the most about crocheting or knitting is doing a gauge swatch and blocking. 2 things I hate the most. I think it's because when I get going with a project, I just want to get going. I just want to get started, right? And when I'm done, I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to do anything else. Unfortunately, those 2 things, finding your gauge and blocking your project, are probably going to be the most important things that you're going to have to do, especially blocking when you're working with a natural fiber, because it's gonna kind of shrink and pop it more so than acrylic. Oftentimes when I'm using an acrylic, like for a blanket, I don't actually block it, or I have to do very little blocking. When I'm using a natural fiber, I do have to do some blocking. And basically, I mean, that's just easy. We're going to see that in another video. But gauge is going to be important. So you want to make sure that you have the right size hook for the yarn. And usually on the label, it's going to tell you the best size hook to use for that particular yarn. For instance, this one here is a weight of a 3. And so the gauge swatch for this would be 18 single crochets by 21 rows, which equals 4 inches. And 4 inches is the standard gauge size swatch. So I always do a swatch gauge just to be on the safe side. I know I hate it, but it saves you so much time in the long run. So I would just do a gauge swatch based on this yarn. And then if I know that it's 18 single crochets by 21 rows, it comes out to 4 inches. I know I got the right size hook with the right size for the yarn. Now, it basically says standard should be somewhere around using a size G6 or a 4mm hook. So that's about standard to use with this. Some people crochet really tight, some people crochet loose. So that might change. You might go to a 3.75 or maybe a 4.25 depending on how you crochet. But the standard is going to be about a size 4 or a G6 for this yarn. Once you get that going, then all you need to do is just to figure out if you know how many stitches. Now remember, when you're doing the bust, you got to do the whole entire thing, okay? If you're doing 2 panels like I did on this one here, I took the total circumference of this one, right, all the way around, and I divided it by 2. So half of it, of the total circumference, was the back side here, and then the other half was the front side. Now, because I did the front side in 2 rectangles, I then took the second half, which was the front, and divided that into 2, which told me the width of each one of the panels on the sides. That's it. That's all you have to do. So to get started, we're going to make this one here. Now I already know the width, and this is based on a size medium, so I use the standard chart just like here, and I double checked it because this is from myself coming around, so I know I'm going to make 2 of these, and because this is going to hang a little bit loose. And then once I'm done, I'm going to make the 2 sleeves. So I've already finished this first side. I'm going to make the second side exactly the same color striping. You don't have to do stripes. You can just do solids, one color all the way across if you're just not sure yet. And then moving it. Now this one here, I used a granny stripe. And then on this one here, I just did kind of an eyelet pattern using double crochets and then skipping a couple stitches. I think I also went down a hook size on this. This one here, I think I'm using a 4. This one here, I went down just a little bit because I really wanted that nice tight weave to it. This is for a guy, and I wanted that tighter weave look to it. And this one here is from me, which I'm gonna use, wear like an undershirt to it. So that's our first step, is just figuring out first of all, figuring out who you're giving it to. Hopefully it's yourself. Secondly, you got to figure out the measurements. Find the standard, just like this, where you can go and just look at these are the standard sizes. And then if you want to double check your work, then you can go ahead and do the measurements. And then you just kind of keep measuring. Measure twice, cut once, as they say. Make sure you always do a gauge swatch. So that's it for this section. This is getting ready to make a garment without a pattern. And once you get the hang of this and just get it in your mind that it's all about shapes, rectangles for the most part, or squares, when you just think about it as far as that goes and then kind of sewing them all together, sewing and making garments becomes so much easier. And this is part 1. So part 2, we're gonna talk about finishing and blocking, and then in part 3, we're gonna actually put it all together and see how it looks. Thanks so much for watching. This is Kimberly with Knit for Brains in my 3-part series on how to make a garment without a pattern. And as always, I'll see you soon.